Welcome to Living a Full Life podcast. Join us as we explore health topics that encourage raising healthy children, living a healthy life, and living the best life possible. Now, here's your host.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Living a Full Life podcast. Great guest today and friend and colleague down the road, Kim Hazleton from Sense Able Brain. We've known each other for a while. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, we kind of overlap a lot with our patient base with kids. We both have a passion on helping them, and we both influence the brain. And I thought you should have been my first guest on the podcast. I mean, but here we are, and we'll do more too about this because questions come in, and we'll dive deep. What got you into all this? How did you start this? Where did it start?
So funny. Growing up, I really had no interest in kids, having kids, being around kids, babysitting, all of that. Wanted to go into accounting. So I did. I spent my first 10 years out of high school getting an accounting degree and working in banks and credit unions and small business, but really realized that I missed having contact with people. And so I went into psychology, went back to school, was majoring in psychology. A friend told me about OT. I fell in love with the concept of OT and went to my first pediatric field work and thought, oh my gosh, what have I been missing out on? These kids are amazing. I love working with them. I love seeing the progress that we can make. And so switched my major to OT, or switched my path in OT because I was going into hand therapy. So switched my path, specialized in pediatrics. Been doing it for 30 years now, and realized that, early on, so 30 years ago, when you would say something about sensory integration or sensory processing, it was like talking about snake oil. And I was ridiculed and I was ostracized from the OT community a lot. But I knew that there was something to it. And so that was the path I took. And we've specialized in sensory processing, sensory integration. And we've taken that a step further because a lot of times we don't know why children's sensory systems are struggling. And in OT school, we're taught about primitive reflexes and kind of how they relate to stroke patients and children with cerebral palsy, but not how they relate to children with anxiety and how they relate to children with learning disabilities and communication disorders and feeding disorders and things like that. So we've gone even deeper and realized that a lot of these sensory issues stem from reflexes that are either never integrated or have become reactivated. Then we took it a step further and started trying to figure out, well, what is holding on to these reflexes? And a lot of times we've realized that even if trauma or stress was not the reason that the reflexes didn't integrate, it prevents them from fully integrating. So I know this is probably way more of a longer answer.
No, this is how we're going to go on this podcast. I love it.
Yeah, but go ahead.
What are kids' conditions with this stuff that you've been seeing? What are they coming in with?
Yeah, so it's funny. A lot of them are coming in without diagnoses. And so we're seeing kids that are just struggling with behaviors, or they've been kicked out of 3 or 4 preschools, or their private school is not a good fit for them because they do great all day. They mask, they regulate in school, they hold it together, but come home and collapse. And the parents are just realizing this is just too much stress on them. And, some of it could be that we're changing the way we're educating children. We are not we're putting a lot of stress on children with the tests and the demands. And, I didn't learn cursive until 2nd or 3rd grade. And now we're teaching it to kindergartners. And multiplication, we're teaching that earlier. And we're not giving kids an opportunity just to develop those neural connections, the developmental process that they have to go through. We're adding stress on top of that. We're eliminating the freedom of movement. They have to sit in chairs all day long, and movement very often is in a natural developmental state is what helps them make these connections. And so we ask them to sit still for 6 hours a day, and they don't get to develop these little brain pathways. And then we say, okay, now perform for us. And so they are stressed and they're anxious and they're traumatized. They are traumatized. There is a chronic trauma there. and it prevents them from moving forward. All of this prevents them from moving forward.
Yeah. So sensory, motor, these can be mild things. They can be behavioral. They can be everything, physical, mental, emotional. These can all be ways, and it's all the brain. And both you in the PT world, me in the chiro in the medical world, medical doctors, we're all taught the same fundamentals as far as pathology. And when you spoke about reflexes, we do reflexes every single day from birth all the way to my 92-year-old patients. And we're taught medically for pathology. If you have hyperreflexia or no reflex, then we have some type of nerve involvement. And it's our job as doctors to go back and figure out how to diagnose this. And that's pretty much it. Then you're left to go into the world and find pathology. But as you and I have both experienced over 20 and 30 years doing this, is that these reflexes tell us a lot about how the brain works. Why does a child have hyper or hyporeflexia? And why do they have primitive reflexes that should be gone by 3, 6, or 9 months? This is what Kim is talking about and I teach you like this, and tell me if it's wrong. Your brain in utero is completely developing like a wild garden. It's growing every plant imaginable, every weed imaginable, because it's trying to grow into a full human. You're born, and what the brain needs to do now is adapt to the real world. And what happens is, I call it a pruning. It's a natural pruning the brain goes through by 12 months of age. By year 1, we should have a pruned and nice rose garden of a brain that can then be damaged by the world in real life, right? But what ends up happening is, if we don't prune properly, we're left with pathways that we call primitive reflexes that should be gone, like the toe flex in the baby that should be gone by 6 months, or the startle reflex. I see 40-year-old men come in, I touch their back with the activator, full startle mode. I'm like, wow, you have a retained reflex from when you were 2 months old. And then we get into a whole brain thing there. So I think I don't know if you like that analogy or not, but that's how I teach parents and families. It's a garden, and we now have to go back in there, and it's through motion. Now the next question is going through all our listeners' mind is like, well, what does that mean? What do we do? It's through proper motion and recalibrating the left and right brain. And there's many ways to do this, right? OT, I think, even as a chiro, don't tell anyone I said this, is the best way to do this, is through motion and guided motion. And that's exactly what you do. And that's why I think we work really well together, helping all these families. And you do your thing. So the assessment is, I think, similar. And then the treatment's a little different. So you're trying to influence through motion, and I'm trying to influence through removing the interference and pruning a lot of this interference that we call it through the central nervous system only. You're working with peripheral. You're working with the full body to do this cross crawl pattern, climb pattern, spinning left, spinning right, all these patterns that we're supposed to be
movements, all of it.
Eye movements with eyes open, with eyes closed. We're doing all this stuff too. And we're doing it on a vibration plate and with lasers, like speech, we're here, motor, we're here and in the back. We're trying to light up the brain. We're trying to use as many modalities as we can to do this, to help kids prune and regulate better. There you go. There's my 2-minute speech on the brain, to catch all the parents up that are listening, so that we can move forward and get into the exciting stuff. So when you're working with these kids and families, what do you find the biggest, we'll talk about rewards at the end, but the biggest struggles that the kids come in with that make it difficult as a provider to help them? But you end up working around it. The most difficult thing that the kids do when they come in, whether it's behavioral, sensory, motor, whatever it is?
Well, usually the primary complaint when families bring their children to us is behavioral. And so, but we recognize behavior as communication. So we don't try to change the behavior. We try to help them adapt and provide us communication that helps us figure out exactly what the culprit is. And again, we're looking at movement patterns. We're looking at sensory motor responses to see exactly where we don't have that adaptive and functional neural patterning, so that we can help train the brain to do a better job in the environment that they have to be in. So for instance, these children that are being kicked out of 3 and 4 preschools, it's not that the preschools are wrong. It's that the child is not developmentally ready to be in that environment and perform to the standard that they are requiring. So they may be having a meltdown when they have to sit down and eat because they're food aversive or something like that. And then those meltdowns are causing the daycares and the preschools to say they're just not appropriate for us. Well, why are they food aversive? We would go in and say, okay, yes, they're having meltdowns. When are they having them? During snack time or during meal time? Well, are we having problems with feeding? Yes, we are. Why are we having problems with feeding? Well, maybe we have a suck, swallow, breathe reflex that's not working properly, or a gag reflex that's overreactive, and the child doesn't feel safe to eat. So we'll go in and start looking at these reflexes and the sensory motor patterns and the ability to volitionally coordinate movement. So can they be in control of their movement and coordinate it to be able to meet the needs of the environment? So a lot of times we would recommend to some parents, maybe we need to change the environment, at least for a period of time. But if we can't, or we're not going to, then let's adapt the child and adapt the family so that they can meet more of the demands of the environment. And so we teach the families as well. This is how to help your child be able to do what they need to do in the classroom, in the school.
Perfect. Yes. Yeah. So that's the challenges, the most common ones that parents come in with. Then the reward. I mean, when kids go through this, I mean, of course, families are ecstatic, but for you as a provider, the reward that you see with it, how does that progress? Because this doesn't happen in a week.
No,
parents are working with us for a long time to help this. It's the brain. It takes time.
Right.
The reward process. I love talking with providers about that. How does that work for you guys as they climb and achieve the next levels?
It's well, we actually, so when families come in to see us, we give them a goodie bag. The first visit that they come in, the evaluation visit, they get a goodie bag. And there are 2 books in there, and I wrote both of the books, and they're self-published on Amazon, but the parents get them for free. And I actually have them here. I forgot I had them. So this one, Calm Down Child, I wrote this in 2020 when the world shut down, and we had families calling us saying we're all melting down, and I forgot all of the things that you taught us. And I literally had families, I would talk to them on the phone and say, I gave you videos. You watched me do this. You have videos. And they're like, we just can't think. And they were asking, how do we regulate in this environment? And so I said, I'm going to write it all down and send you a PDF. And I realized we had so many regulation techniques that we use. There's over 50 techniques in this book. So I wrote it all down and it turned into a book. And so I published it on Amazon, and we give it away to families for free. So one of the first things we do is we educate the families. And when families start to go, aha, I see how I can help my child. Oh, that is so rewarding, because very often the families just feel lost. They don't know what to do. And then the second book that we give them, I have this one here too, is called Neuro Roots. And this is just a kind of a workbook, like a follow along workbook for families when they come in. And this is the path that we take with your child. And we have a diagram in there of the reflex path. And we kind of show them, a lot of the reflexes develop and integrate kind of together. And so we've got this little group of reflexes that are connected here, and then this little group here, and they kind of integrate all at the same time so that they understand when we're working on these reflexes, why we're working on some of these together, but we also know some of them are connected, and we'll say we have to address this first so we can address this one up here that's really holding back maybe the ability of the eyes to track left and right for reading skills. So we are helping this family see this as they are watching their child get better, and they're feeling more empowered to be able to help their child at home and to help the school support the child while we're changing these neural pathways.
Yeah,
so it's a wonderful and amazing. I love what we're able to do.
To teach them. I mean, the hope what parents get when they first come in for our offices, at least, is I'm like, your child is going to catch up. We all do. We just want them to enjoy being a 4-year-old. We want them to enjoy and adapt to being a 5-year-old, because by the time they're 18, their brain's going to catch up. In 25, their brain's still developing. They're going to work around the pruning, which I think that's why the 40-year-old that comes in my office and still has the startle reflex, they just live the rest of their life with that. How that affects them in life is through behavior too. They get startled very easy. They don't adapt to stress very easy, and they're anxious. And when we work on that, they're like, for the first time in 20 years, I'm sleeping more than 3 hours, right? So the brain, we adapt, and that's what we're trying to do with our kids is get them what they need early, so that they can enjoy being the first grader and the third grader and the fifth grader. So that's the reward I see with all this, which is fantastic.
Well, and you know better than I do that when these reflexes remain active, it creates asymmetries, musculoskeletal asymmetries. So then you end up with back issues and neck issues and shoulder issues and sciatic joint issues. And so if we can get these things regular or integrated much earlier in life and not have to end up as an adult with asymmetric tonic neck reflex, which is pulling your body in, a certain pattern, then we can possibly prevent at least that cause of musculoskeletal issues. So it's more long-term reach than just being able to stay in preschool or just being able to learn to read. It like you said, it truly is a lifelong issue.
Yeah. I mean, I think parents now, my parents didn't put me in any type of physical therapy as a kid. I mean, I wish I had access to that as a kid, but parents are well versed at knowing that traumas early on can lead to lifelong things, and the negative stresses can. I think when it comes to positive stress, we think maybe, sleep and nutrition mainly come to most parents these days is, we got to put in good fuel and proper sleep. But the little things that we think about as well, posture and how we hold ourselves and taking care of our brain. That's a newer thing. I think that's why you were ridiculed 30 years ago. I was ridiculed 20 years ago, is because they're like, the brain's the brain. It's just a sponge in our skull. And there's nothing you can do about it. And now the research is completely different. We were taught, the genetics I learned in 2001 in college, it no longer is taught anymore because it's completely obsolete. And we were taught there was 34 billion cells in the human body. There's just 11 trillion cells in the nervous system. So it just shows you where we're going here and how much we just do not know. It's super great. When you work with kids, the experience that they go through, describe that. What is it? Not a typical, because there's no such thing as a typical. This is not a cookie cutter program. It's what's the typical experience that they go through. Not just the openness of your office, not just the welcoming environment and the playful environment that you've created for safe child care, but what is their experience? What's the feedback you get from parents?
Yeah, well, so our office is the experience that the families and the children get to walk into is very intentional. I've said for years, I want this for the kids. I want them to feel like they're walking into grandma's house. So the colors are light and welcoming and calming, lots of natural elements to it. And the families get embraced, not physically embraced unless they want it, but everybody is welcome. And we want the families to join the treatment sessions as much as possible so that we can get them involved. They get on the balls, they get in the swings, they get on the mats. And I'm talking about the parents, siblings. We want everyone in there as much as possible, as long as we can manage it. Now, if it becomes a distraction to the child, we will say we need a few minutes, to be able to work with them alone. But I want this to feel like going to grandma's house. I want it to feel like our clinicians are the aunts and uncles of the child, the sisters of the parents. We want to take a sisterly sibling approach and say, we're going to treat you like you're our little sister. We're going to teach you the things that you don't know yet. We're going to hold your hand. We're going to walk with you through this, and we're going to love your child and help your child progress. And I want to come back to something you said earlier, where you said something that this is not a quick fix. And I think it's important to recognize that for the reflexes that we work on at Sensable Brain, we'll work on reflexes that should take up to 3 years to fully integrate. So if these reflexes take 3 years to fully integrate in a typical neurodevelopmental pattern, and we are working with an 8-year-old, that means we're working on reflexes that are 5 years behind. And if we've been using these reflexes for 5 years longer than we should have, and we're just working around them, it takes a long time to get the brain to decide that it's going to be willing to use a different pattern. It digs in and wants to hold on to some of these patterns because it's been using them for so long.
Yes, great point. That's the truth of this. It takes a long time to get there. Yes, we have our initial phase of care where we're trying to make and influence the brain as quickly as possible to get change in behavior, but the brain's neuroplastic and it takes time, and kids work a lot faster. I'd rather catch you at 8 than at 16.
Yes.
So absolutely, you're absolutely right about that. So the time frame on that is patience, learn as much as you can. A lot of this can be done at home. Of course, you're learning. It's something that's take home. None of this is magic stuff that you have to come into our office for. We just try and facilitate it in a linear manner. Try and take something very non-linear, like the brain, and try and move it in a linear pattern.
Right.
Yeah, it's complicated, but that's what we're here for, is to use our expertise to help families move forward in the right way. Great. So we have the Sense Able Brain Center, and then we have the Sense Able Brain Academy.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about the Academy.
The Academy is an enrichment and learning center. It's sensory rich. We've got outdoor space that we can take the kids out and let them get fresh air and get in the dirt and, touch the weeds and play in the grass and all of that. It is where we are offering classes for children, neurotypical and neurodivergent children. The classes are small. Right now, we've got a preschool class. I say preschool class. It's a preschool enrichment program called Stepping Stones for 3 to 5-year-olds. And then we've also got a wrestling basics class for 8 to 12-year-old boys. And that class has just exploded. That's been a very popular class for those boys. They love getting in there and just kind of, roughhousing with each other, but they get to do it with direction. So we have a wrestling coach and then his assistant, and our wrestling coach is a 2-time state champion wrestling coach. So he knows what he's doing, and he's also coached other teams before. So what we're doing with this, how this came about is, for years I've had families ask me to open a school, and I'm not interested in opening a school. I don't want to deal with all of that. Yeah. But I do see the benefit of, as our children that we're working with in the therapy, as they're getting more progressed and they're catching up to their neurodevelopmental peers, age-appropriate peers, they need practice. They need a chance to practice with a little bit of extra support, a little, knowing eye watching them for some of their triggers and some of the warning signs that they might be starting to dysregulate, and then reminding them, hey, these are your compensatory techniques. You have the processing skills now, but now you need to stop using these behavior patterns that you've been using. And we're just going to support you with using more adaptive and functional behavior patterns in a typical learning environment. So again, it's a smaller environment, but it allows us to kind of redirect sometimes, or to offer more support where somebody might need it until they don't need it anymore. So it's a really good transition from therapy to being able to go into some sort of learning environment.
Wonderful. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Kim is 1.5 miles down the road from our office. We service the Lutz community here in North Tampa. Mm-hmm. So if you're listening and you're struggling with your kids, reach out to Kim, start there, because the direction is going to be absolutely wonderful on that. And maybe we'll see some Sense Able Academy wrestling champions down the road here in Florida. That'd be amazing. Yeah. Very cool. Keep doing the work that you do is phenomenal. I'm going to have you on the show again. We'll dive deeper into neurodivergence a little bit as well. But this is a great introduction into what you do, what we do, and how we cooperate in the community to make the community better. So that's absolutely fantastic. Thank you for your time. Is there anything else you want to tell anyone?
No, just thank you so much for letting me come on here and just share what we do. We absolutely love it. And we would love to see more families come in and get the help that they need.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Kim. Appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate you as well.
Thanks so much for tuning into this episode of Living a Full Life podcast. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. That helps others find the show, and we greatly appreciate it. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.